yesterday, the president grabbed news headlines when he went to the floor of the National Assembly to present, the 2024 national budget to a joint session of the National Assembly comprising, the senators and the House of Reps members. The interesting thing is that yesterday he made history and he tagged the budget renewed hope. That's to about 27.5 trillion compared to that of 2023. 2023 was 21 trillion. So that's a difference of about 6.5 trillion. So I'm going to start with you, Dauza, with the theme, renewed hope. Do you think that is more political, as some will argue, that's more political, or the president is objective this time around by tagging that budget renewed hope, the budget of renewed hope? Let's start with that.
Okay, I think the numbers should speak for themselves. If you look at the figures as the president presented them yesterday, you see there's a marked difference from what happened in 2023 and what we are seeing in 2024. You see, the deficit in 2023 was about 6.1%, which of course would have meant that the federal government needed more money to borrow to be able to finance its budget. But what we have seen that this year's budget had actually gone down to about 3.4% of the GDP, speaking to the deficit. So hope is rekindling, so we are not spending more trying to fund the budget. That government is looking out to see how he's able to put a whole lot of things together. Because that has actually been my worry. You are having a budget of 27 trillion, and you are looking at projected revenue of about 10.1 trillion from tax, dividends, and other sources. And you see that there's a gap of about 17 trillion, and you're wondering how we're going to,
where will the money
come from to finance this budget. And so we saw that he also alluded that the area of energy and greening, Nigeria won't have to spend so much money in that direction. We will need to rely on private-public partnership to drive that project. And said he detailed some of his ministers to go to Dubai and not come empty-handed. So these are the things that, of course, are bringing hope back to us to see that things are being done well. And I'm also very intrigued by the fact that the president said, well, go ahead, scrutinize this budget very well, but don't delay it so that we can kick off and maintain that January to December budget cycle without any hitch. And of course, the National Assembly also retorting in their vote of thanks and saying, Mr. President, please speak to your minister, head of MDAs, that when they call them to come to the National Assembly for the verse of budget, they should not travel. They should come on time and let's do all of this together and see how Nigeria can make progress. So to a very large extent, I think there's hope.
All right. Before we do further analysis, I would like us to listen to the president. He spoke about the direction, its objective as regards this 2024 budget. I would like us to take a listen.
The proposed budget seeks to achieve job-rich economic growth, macroeconomic stability, a better investment environment, enhanced human capital development, as well as poverty reduction and greater access to social security. Defense and internal security are recorded top priority. The internal security architecture will be overhauled to enhance law enforcement capabilities and safeguard lives, property, and investment across the country.
Let's go. All right. You've heard the president. Let me take you to Idauza now. He said defense and security will be given priority, will be prioritized. And if you look at the breakdown of the budget, that is taking the chunk of the allocation as far as the funds be allocated in the budget. What does that suggest to you about the intention of the president?
Well, I think it's also very, very heartwarming to know that the president has prioritized the real key issues that, of course, will create that enabling environment for foreign direct investments and public-private participation to happen in governance. Number one, it is important that if you're in a state of war, nobody wants to put money in that economy. Even if people are bringing money, it will be humanitarian, and it will be channeled toward economic activity. So defense is critical because we look at the entire length and breadth of the nation, from the northeast to the southeast, all the troubles that are brewing, we need to actually see how to curtail them. I'm not thinking that this may be in terms of hardware alone. We must also be looking at soft power in dealing with these issues. And that's why, of course, followed defense and security is education, which, of course, the president also highlighted that was very critical, that human capital is very critical to the development of any society. Because if you look at the story of Singapore, for example, trying to see how to attract FDI from all parts of the world to Singapore, one of the decisions that the government took at the very beginning was to see how to empower intellectually the youth of Singapore to be able to fit into the dream of being the finance capital. And this required that the best of brain, of course, the Singaporean government needed to train abroad, and we're investing locally in the education, fostering science and mathematics, and these were deliberate policies by that government. And of course, in no due time, we see that the country rises. So human capital is actually also very important. And of course, don't forget infrastructure. We have a very wide deficit in terms of infrastructure. And the president is looking at spending close to 6 trillion of the budget sum in this critical area to see how we can enhance security, create the right human capital that is needed to drive the economy, and then, of course, build some basic infrastructure that will create that enabling environment for business to thrive.
Well, the budget for me, it looks realistic given current situations, but I have some worries. But before I get to the part of the worries, for me, what was impressive about the budget is that the difference between recurrent expenditure, non-debt recurrent expenditure, and capital expenditure isn't so wide as what we usually see. You see recurrent expenditure taking a very large chunk of the budget and capital expenditure just having very little, but that's not the case with this budget. And then for debt servicing too, it is not also very huge, which is quite impressive. I think that the removal of oil subsidy has helped in that regard. And then looking at the financing of the deficit, which is about 8 trillion, there will be borrowings, and there will also be borrowings from privatization proceeds and all. That is quite okay. But the worry that I have, however, is the dollar rate that was adopted, which is 750 naira. It is realistic given the current situation, but it doesn't quite give hope to business people. It doesn't quite give hope about the outlook of the coming year, because that means that we're still going to have the hike in price of goods and services, because if 750 naira is adopted officially, you can imagine what the parallel market, the rate will have there. And a lot of importers source forex from that market. So that means that the situation we're having in terms of price hike in goods and services may continue in the year 2024. That is the worry that I have. And then the production estimates, the oil price benchmark is put at almost $78 per barrel. Well, also realistic, it could go over that, but yes, that's good. But the production estimate is quite low. Yes, I would say again that they are quite realistic, but it also means that maybe much work haven't been done, or there isn't strategy to do much work to increase production, because 1.78 million barrels per day is quite low. It's quite low. So I don't quite see a lot of things changing apart from the focus of the budget, where the areas where the budget is going to focus on, which is security. When security is improved, then of course you could have a better environment to do business. And then talking about human capital development, people need to upskill, whether formally or informally, so that they can be in better position to generate revenue by themselves. And then social safety nets. The part that I like about it is that the existing beneficiaries will be targeted at being productive, and that will be not just giving people fish, but also giving you enough fish. Right now, I want to teach you how to fish and see how you too can contribute to other persons getting fish. So those are the impressive areas for me, but my worry, like I said, is the exchange rate and then our production estimate. It doesn't quite look like we would have so much difference in those aspects.
No, but I think it's not need to worry so much about. If you look at the background against which the president spoke at the floor of the National Assembly chamber, was the fact that we understand what is driving the exchange rate. Now, they are not situations that you can deal with. Yeah, you can deal with.
Make projections based on what you are doing.
Yeah. You see, the issue is that we need to deal with critical issues. Some of them are not within our control. We cannot determine what happened in that direction. Of course, the hike in price of goods, which is, of course, propelled by the geopolitics that is happening outside of Nigeria, they are huge factors. We can't see in our country and determine when the Ukrainian-Russia war is going to end, for example. And the prices that this is triggering all across the globe is not within our control.
Sorry to cut in, but I find that a bit contradictory, that we can't sit in our home and determine what happens with the Ukraine and Russia crisis. By that I mean,
just listen. You see, there are things that you need to be able to understand. We are living in a very connected world. That what is happening in one country affects what happened in your own country. Now, if there are situations that are outside, take for example, just the war in between the conflict between the Hamas and Israeli, see what it has created in the whole of the Middle East, and what is happening, even the spillover and the shock effect that it gives to all economies in the world. We're not talking about Nigeria, and that's why, of course, he spoke against that we are growing against the headwind, which are internationally determined. Because, for example, logistics is going to tell you how much you are going to buy goods, because we are going to say, because we are heavily import-dependent economy. Now, we can't solve that in 2024 alone. That is it. Now, what you're going to be looking at is that how is CBN going to manage the monetary situation such that the difference between the official rate and the parallel market is not so wide. Now, what that will mean is that if all the agreements that, of course, the government is entering into, the partnership that the government is entering into, and these funds are coming into the country, of course, it will increase the inflow of dollars. And if you have sufficient dollar within the economy, the people at the parallel are not likely going to be selling at 1,000. And which means we'll be able to have a kind of a parity between what is in the official window and what is in the parallel window. For example, if CBN has enough dollar, for example, to sell, and they are in the commercial bank, nobody will need to go to parallel market to go and buy. If you remember, at the beginning of the floating, the exchange rate at the official window became higher than higher than the one at the parallel market. So what this means is that as long as people are having to get this from the official window, and is available, which means, of course, economic activities is increasing within the situation, we can stabilize at the moment at that. But the projection is between 2024 because you are looking at the framework of about 5 years, 6 years, which is a projection. So we can expect a drastic downturn. But what you are projecting is that given all circumstances put together, we are looking toward this direction. It's a projection. It could be lower.
It could be higher.
It could be higher. That's projection. What is going to determine whether it's low or high are also the reality in the international space. So if the condition in the international space worsen, for example, you don't have anything to do about that.
Okay, this is what I was aiming at when you talked about the Ukraine situation, by extension, what plays out in the international scene. You know, when we talked about the stockfish thing and reproducing some of the things that we consume in some editions of this program, we talked about producing for ourselves the things that we consume. Now, take the Ukraine and the Russia case, for instance. Our major import from them is wheat and other grains.
No, it's not for us alone. This is
I get what you're saying, but there's
wait, you are not getting the. You are not getting
what you were saying, but there's someone going with it.
This is the issue. China, India, for example,
yes,
our major trading partners, take gas and petrol from Russia.
I get
Now, what it means is that if the prices of these things are going up for other countries that we are buying from, it's not just wheat. The factor is more than wheat.
I only use that as an example because largely we are import dependent. What about looking?
As long as that is the reality,
as long as that is the case, it then
international space.
Yes, largely we are import dependent.
Yeah.
But what is the plan to look at some of our imports, cutting down also on our need for forex? That is what I'm talking about. Not just
but
I
you
only
see,
use
when
that
you
as an
say
example.
cutting down on import, it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
Yes,
if you are going to, for example, build a factory today and bring in the machinery, you're not going to do it today. You can't start producing machinery today to determine that, oh, by today we won't be having to import cloth. You will need to first build a factory. You will need to put a structure in place, and this cannot happen in a physical year.
I like the fact that for me, starting with a theme, I like it's more strategic for me, taking it renewed hope. You know, Nigerians, they've been very hopeful, you know, since this president has been elected. For me, I think he's the most experienced president Nigeria will ever have. And so Nigerians have been hopeful. Now, taking it renewed hope, we've had instances in the past where a certain president has promised, okay, Nigeria should be hopeful. But now this one is tagged renewed hope.
Is it about
so for
tag?
me, no, hold on.
What is
for
it?
me, it's
Tag.
strategic. You know, what it means is it gives a sense of direction to what the president intends to do. You might look at the fact that it's one of his political slogans or his political during campaign, but it's also strategic in the sense that it's providing direction when it comes to what he wants to achieve with the budget, you know, to create economic stability. I also like the fact that the issue of defense and security is being prioritized. In the last 5 years, Nigeria has been in the bad light when it comes to the issue of insecurity because of the issue activities of insurgents and all that. And it's also critical for investors who wants to come into Nigeria. You know, the president has been talking about FDI, foreign direct investment. For investors to come into your space, they must be ensured that you're providing adequate security. So when you have a budget prioritizing defense and security, it tells you that the president is more proactive, is serious about the issue of defense and security. And so that will also motivate investors who wants to come into the Nigerian space to bring their money and to do businesses. The good thing also is also what the Minister of Finance also corroborated yesterday, that the budget is not going to be, the over-dependence on borrowing this time around is going to be avoided, whereby you do more of generating IGR, asset sales, and to look at the possibility of, you know, improving the tax net so that we can generate money internally rather than depending on borrowing. So the good thing for me also is the fact that the implementation of the budget will start as early as January 1st, and the National Assembly, they've gone into work. They've broken into the several committees to see what they can do to ensure that this is passed, so that by the time we start the year 2024, the budget will kick on a good note. But my worry also is the level of performance, which has always been an annual challenge. over the years, with the level of performance of the budget has been performing very low, whereby you have projections. Of course, they are estimated figures. But like what Idauza was saying, the realities will still play out. In the international space, you can't be isolated. The truth is, if your economy is still import-driven, what it means is, if the foreign currencies, if I may put it this way, if the dollar sneezes, it affects the naira.
Yes.
So what are we going to do locally to ensure that we mitigate this effect? And that's why the president has been emphasizing on human development capital to look inward. The truth is, there are certain things you have control over. There are certain things you don't have control over. So for me, what we have control over locally, let's focus on that when it comes to the issue of production. I'm happy. One of the major challenges has to be the ease of doing business. It's part of what the president talked about yesterday, that is going to be tackled headlong. And then the issue of power, because of the signature, I mean, a few months ago, the president signed the electricity bill. And so all these factors will help businesses to thrive in Nigeria. But it's a matter of time. It's not something that will happen overnight, like what that
but you see, this is what he said. I've said to my cabinet, this assignment we have taken on is likened to drawing water from a dry well. And that statement for me is very profound. You see, we can speculate all that we can. We must all come to terms with the reality of life. A woman can't be pregnant today and give birth tomorrow. It will take 9 months. And that's the process. So, but what you are going to see, and these are the things for me which brings hope. And that's where I started from, looking at the debt finance or deficit finance to GDP, which has drastically moved from 6% to 3%. And that gives hope. If it's realized at the end of the day, like I said, you projected revenue for 11 trillion last year in this year's budget, and as at 30th of September, what you have realized is about 8 trillion. That's the actual that's coming in. So there's more deficit. These are issues that we must look at, and these are the critical things we can hazard as a guess. Look, what is the borrowing profile for 2024? 7.4 trillion. That's what the president is projecting. Yes, we're going to take some money, because there's no way you finance 27 trillion where your projected revenue is 10 trillion. But it's not to say that the government is not doing anything. For me, the numbers are not ambitious. You are looking at OPEC also trying to stabilize the price of petrol worldwide. And they are still talking about how to cut coal in terms of the crude available in the market space. Again, not within your control, because you belong to that, you signed that treaty and you're a member of that, and you must play by the rule of OPEC. You can't just wake up every morning and say, oh, I'm going to produce 20. Now, you have to also project it along what is happening with your partners, whether they are the OPEC, whether they are World Health Organization, UNESCO. All this will condition how this will play out. But the truth for me here is the fact that we're looking at numbers that are going downward in terms of deficits, and that is real renewed hope.
We need to move on now. We have to spend more time on this, because in the business community, this is the major news for today. It's been trending since yesterday.
Because a lot of businesses want to know, okay, how's it going to be next year? How's it going to be
so let's move on. It's still about the president. The president is heading to Dubai to attend the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, where he will deliver a national statement at the World's Leaders Summit. Talking about COP28 is going to start today, from now till December 12th. It's an international conference about the climate change, and that has been the focus over the years. And this time around, nothing different from that will also going to happen. So, but our president strategically is planning to attend the conference, on his way to the conference, or perhaps is there now. Let me take you to Idauza. If you still about the president, the president is heading to Dubai to attend the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, where he will deliver a national statement at the World's Leaders Summit. Talking about COP28 is going to start today, from now till December 12th. It's an international conference about the climate change, and that has been the focus over the years. And this time around, nothing different from that will also going to happen. So, but our president strategically is planning to attend the conference, on his way to the conference, or perhaps is there now. this is an advantage for our president to also take advantage of this global stage to either talk about his plans, his economic plans, or what he intends to achieve, you know, as the chairman of ECOWAS. I'd like you to talk to us. What do you think the president should prioritize or take advantage of this global stage to achieve?
I think one of the things going for our president is the fact that by words and deed, he has not so much deviated from his renewed hope document. And so it is very easy for us to predict what the president is going to ask for. And he has spoken extensively in different fora on the lip service that the Western powers and the developed economies are paying to the issue of climate change and the greening sustainability debate. We are talking about financing, because this will be on the table. How maybe the developing world can borrow more money to invest on the green technology and see how we can reduce carbon footprint here. Now, but this is the position of the president. Is it not allow us to use what we have or give us money to do what we want to do? So I think this is what the president is saying, because he has already alluded to it even at the presentation yesterday, that he has already detailed the members of cabinet, the strategic ministers that are going for this conference to secure deals and tangible commitments.
And attract foreign direct investment.
Yes, on the funding of greening Nigeria. So it is clear from the president's point of view that yes, because between us we know that most of the impact we're talking about here actually come from the West, and they should actually be paying us reparation for creating so much of environmental degradation back home here, and not really asking us to come and borrow more, take more loan to finance this new project, which of course they are the one holding the knife and holding the yam. So I think the president is going to be more strategic in asking for and negotiating with some of the advanced economy to see how can you come partner with us, because he has said it from day one that he would not mind delaying gratification. In other words, I can allow private participation in the economy, build, operate, and then hand over after a period of time, and then we can begin to reap the benefit. So this for me may be the focus of the president's address at COP28.